I don't have any gifts to give to poor people like you. Go back home now. We couldn't understand what my sister-in-law, Kathy, was saying. She kept grumbling about past grievances, seemingly having hidden the gift she intended for her daughter Mia. She had stayed in the adjoining room until the last minute to hide the present. Kathy forcefully snatched the gift Mia had prepared from her hands. After examining the gift as if savoring it, she threw it onto the floor. Such a pathetic thing can't possibly be a present. Someone who would give something like this is no family member of mine. Get out. It seems she was displeased that it wasn't the designer brand she had specified. The floor was scattered with earrings Mia had carefully chosen, while the other children participating in the gift exchange picked them up. Mia seemed frozen, unable to grasp what was happening. Tears soon welled up in her eyes. She's still in middle school, after all. And crying was inevitable. Kathy looked triumphant seeing Mia like this. My mother-in-law entered the room late and scoffed at the crying Mia. Taking advantage of the situation, Kathy continued to berate us. However, it didn't last long. I am Vanessa Brown. I work part-time while raising my daughter Mia, who will soon turn 13. I had her at 35. Mia is not the daughter of my current husband, David, who is a year older than me. Before marrying David, I was married to someone else. Mia is the daughter from that marriage. We were a happy family until my former husband died in a car accident. Mia was only 3 at the time and has little memory of her father. I was engulfed in grief immediately after his death. But I couldn't let Mia lose her mother too. I decided to raise her as a single mother, which meant I needed money. Since then, I've been juggling childcare and my part-time job. I met David when he transferred to my workplace 2 years later. Being a single mother made things difficult at times. Like when I had to pick Mia up from kindergarten, causing inconvenience to my colleagues. David always supported me through these times. His kindness drew me to him, and we started dating. At first, Mia was nervous around David as he was the first man in our lives after her father. But he approached her not as a would-be father but as a friend. Gradually, she warmed up to him and even began calling him Dad, which clearly delighted him. During our relationship, David confessed that he was infertile. I truly think of Mia as my own daughter. While Vanessa and I can't have children together, I still want to live with Vanessa and Mia. David felt a strong sense of inadequacy about his infertility. But he never stopped showing immense love for Mia. When she fell ill, he even came to care for her. His infertility was never a reason for me to leave him. Seeing him treat Mia like his own, I couldn't think of separating from him. He was not just indulgent, he was also strict when necessary, genuinely caring for Mia. We talked it over and decided to cherish the happiness we had. After opening up, David became even more attentive to Mia and me. We moved in together and married when Mia was 8. My father-in-law warmly accepted our marriage. He adores Mia as if she were his biological granddaughter, and she is fond of him too, which allowed us to build a good relationship with him. However, my mother-in-law perceived me as a gold digger who tricked her son into marriage. Whenever we visited my in-laws, she blamed me for any issues that arose. Whether it was not having enough dishes or finding a speck of dust, she would pin it on me. Kathy, David's sister, was also hostile towards me. Although married with 3 daughters who are mild-mannered like their father, Kathy lived just a 10-minute walk from our in-laws and frequently visited. We only visited during holidays due to our 2-hour train ride. Kathy needed to feel superior, along with my mother-in-law. She would belittle me and flaunt her new designer bags at every opportunity. We aren't as wealthy as you might think. This is the best we can do. My family lives in Ohio, far from where we live in New York. And we don't communicate frequently, so I don't receive financial help. I work part-time, and we can't afford designer items, which Kathy knows yet flaunts anyway. Fast fashion is unacceptable. You should have proper branded items. Today's outfit cost around $10,000. Kathy's children wore non-designer clothes, which showed she was only satisfied if she could dress up. I preferred to spend money on making Mia happy rather than on myself. I was sick of Kathy and my mother-in-law. Mia didn't have a good impression of them either. Mia is watching videos in her room, so don't worry, she'd say and hide whenever they were around. I regretted involving my daughter in adult conflicts. Both of them always have something to say. I'm sorry. It's always been like this. Dad and I are on your side, Vanessa. Especially my father-in-law, who didn't think highly of Kathy's need to boast. Whenever there was a problem, he would step in and mediate. David also had unpleasant memories of Kathy consuming his favorite snacks as a child. Both had grown up and David didn't visit home much after moving out. After marrying me and wanting to introduce Mia to his family, he only showed up occasionally and rarely interacted with Kathy. However, Mia and Kathy's children got along well. It seemed cruel to separate them due to adult issues. With David and my father-in-law's help, Kathy and I maintained a polite distance. Fortunately, she never came to our home. We managed to smooth things over by enduring a few visits a year. Mia will grow up, and we'll see them less. Just a bit more patience. I'm okay, I reassured David and myself. One day, as the city lights began to twinkle with Christmas decorations, we received an invitation to a Christmas party at my in-laws. Hosted by Kathy, but with my father-in-law's help. Naturally, Mia wanted to attend. She's still in middle school and not used to traveling alone by train for 2 hours. The party was on a Sunday, and both David and I were off work. We decided to take Mia to the in-laws for the party, which would inevitably involve a gift exchange. While we couldn't afford expensive gifts, we prepared something anyway. Hearing this, Kathy arbitrarily specified the gifts. The invitation came with a gift list that included high-end necklaces and cosmetics. Unlikely items for children to use, all priced over $500 each. Seeing that Kathy's children never wore designer items, it was clear the list was not for the kids but for Kathy herself. We ignored her specifications and let Mia choose the gifts. She couldn't decide in one shopping trip and returned multiple times, visibly enjoying the selection process. Eventually, she settled on earrings and an eraser, totaling $30. Mia counted down the days to the Christmas party. It was a special occasion, and we decided to pay extra attention to avoid any conflicts. On the day of the party, Kathy's children had stayed overnight to decorate. The lavish cake and roast chicken were apparently handmade by my father-in-law, who used to be a chef. The adults tried to stay out of the room to let the kids enjoy themselves. The layout of the in-laws' house included a guest room next to the living room, and a small room in the back, which used to be David's childhood bedroom. While the children celebrated in the living room, the adults gathered in the small room to drink. Kathy's husband, busy with work, couldn't attend. Even from the small room, we could hear the joyful noises from the living room. The adults engaged in trivial social talk. Kathy seemed to avoid me. She was around when the lavish food was served, but was now nowhere to be seen. I preferred not to encounter her either, so it worked out for me. As the party was winding down, it was time for the gift exchange. I want you to take my gift. Mia held out the presents to Kathy's daughters with both hands. They happily accepted the gifts. It seemed only Kathy had demanded specific presents, not her daughters. It was right to let the children choose the gifts. The exchange proceeded in an old-fashioned way, with music playing and the person holding the gift when the music stopped keeping it. Kathy's daughters tried to enjoy the swap, but there was a shortage of presents. They puzzled over the count, as each had prepared one gift. I joined in searching for the missing gifts among the half-eaten snacks and toys scattered across the floor. Perhaps a gift had slipped into a corner, I thought, but after a thorough search, one was still missing. Had it been accidentally thrown away? Just then, Kathy, who had disappeared earlier, entered the living room and started yelling at Mia. I don't have any gifts to give to poor people like you. Go back home now. We couldn't understand Kathy's words. She continued to mutter her usual complaints. Apparently, she had hidden the present meant for Mia. She had been in the next room until the last minute for that purpose. Kathy forcefully snatched the gift Mia had prepared from her daughter's hands. After examining the gift as if to savor it, she threw it onto the floor. Such a pathetic thing can't possibly be a present. Someone who would give something like this is no family of mine. Get out. It seemed she was displeased that it wasn't the designer brand she had specified. The earrings Mia had chosen one by one were scattered on the floor. The children picked them up, but Mia seemed frozen, unable to grasp what was happening. Tears soon welled up in her eyes. She's only a 13-year-old middle school student. After all, and crying was inevitable. Seeing Mia like this, Kathy looked triumphant. My mother-in-law entered the room late and scoffed at the crying Mia. Taking advantage of the situation, Kathy continued to berate us. However, it didn't last long. It's you who should leave, Kathy. My father-in-law hurried in from the next room. He began yelling at Kathy while wiping Mia's tears. He is usually a mild-mannered man. And I had never seen him so angry. Kathy, and even my mother-in-law, who had been joining in the mockery until now, were silenced. Dad, were you listening? I had been the one searching for the gifts with the children. I thought my father-in-law, who is not strong with alcohol, hadn't seen anything. But it turned out that both he and David had witnessed the entire exchange. In fact, the only ones drinking alcohol were my mother-in-law and Kathy. My father-in-law and David had been drinking non-alcoholic beer. While I was searching for the gifts, David had told my father-in-law that Kathy had demanded brand name items. My father-in-law had been waiting for the right moment to intervene, knowing that was unacceptable. Not only that, Kathy's children had also started to comfort Mia. What are you doing? You'll catch poverty from them. Kathy cried out in a panic, trying to pull her children away from Mia. The children ignored Kathy's pleas. Even as my mother-in-law joined in trying to call them back, all the children faced Mia. None of them looked back, as if their actions declared that what the two women were doing was wrong. Apparently, Kathy and my mother-in-law had always assumed the children would be on their side. They were taken aback by the children's response. How long will you keep wanting brand name things? You're just a housewife now. Surprised by this, my father-in-law took the children to another room and shared a story from the past. Kathy had always had a spending habit, starting from her college days when she began working at a nightclub to fund her social life. Unlike a store job, the club paid well, and it was understandable for a young girl just out of high school to get carried away with the substantial income. Plus, she needed to wear designer dresses and bags for the job. Kathy worked at the nightclub to afford new designer bags, increasing her shifts whenever she ran out of money. She continued this lifestyle for 3 years but had to quit in her 3rd year of college. When my father-in-law discovered she was working at the nightclub, Kathy tried to keep it a secret and continue working. But she stopped when threatened with eviction from home. That yelling by my father-in-law was the only time in the past he had done so. After quitting, Kathy worked a cash register at a supermarket and eventually became an office worker at a general company, where she met her current husband. She quit her job when they married and has not been able to stop buying brand name items since. Her husband often scolded her. If you can't buy it yourself, it means it's out of your league. Don't make others buy it for you. The gifts Kathy had specified were all items she wanted to buy. Gifts are supposed to be like that, right? What's wrong with that? Kathy retorted breathlessly. Kathy, you're living off just your part-time income now, right? And yet you buy so many brand name products? I've increased my shifts. I bought everything with my own part-time earnings. She reacted slowly as if struck by a painful truth. My father-in-law didn't miss her hesitation. So what's this then? He pulled out his mobile phone and showed us a screen displaying the total amount of debt from private financial institutions. Why do you have this? I saw it in your mother's room. There's no better proof than this. Kathy faltered and looked down. The Christmas party atmosphere had faded. That day ended with us being out of place. And it turned into a Christmas the children would probably prefer to forget. We bought Mia her favorite stuffed animal on the way home and decided to redo the family party just for the 3 of us. 3 months later, my father-in-law called. Kathy had gotten divorced. Her ex-husband hadn't known about the debt until he was informed by my father-in-law, and hurriedly conducted a background check. Shockingly, Kathy had cancelled her children's education insurance policies and spent all the money on brand-name goods. Her ex-husband couldn't forgive her and chose to divorce. Kathy took her mother and stormed her ex-husband's family home, but that backfired and they were estranged. Since that Christmas, Kathy's children have also distanced themselves from her. Fortunately, they were all over 15, old enough to choose their custody. And they all chose to live with their father. Kathy is currently facing claims for compensation and child support from her ex-husband, which she has been delinquent in paying. Although her ex-husband has a stable income from his job and isn't struggling financially to raise the children, raising 3 kids alone is undoubtedly challenging. He had always been busy with work, often away from home, which was why he couldn't attend the Christmas party. Should I help the kids with their studies? I'm currently researching online education at work. It might be a good fit. David has always loved children. The kids were fond of him too, and he had occasionally taught them during their visits to the in-laws. Grateful for how he protected Mia, their father officially asked David to occasionally supervise the children's studies online. It's been half a year since the divorce, but I still get occasional spiteful messages from my sister. Meanwhile, Kathy continued to blame others, hurling insults at David and the children. I raised them. What ungrateful daughters. I was kind to them for nothing. They'll regret this. Divorce is outrageous. After the divorce, Kathy returned to her parents' home. Despite her volatile temperament, her mother always supported her. Her father, however, began to doubt his wife's actions, noticing a change from her previous tendency to scold Kathy to now agreeing with her on everything. The current behavior of his wife felt off to anyone observing. When my father-in-law began to investigate, he uncovered decisive evidence. At his request, we visited the in-laws' home for the first time since the Christmas party. David and I had kept our distance from the in-laws, having no reason to visit as my father-in-law regularly came to our house. The two were always out shopping at the same time every day. When we arrived, they had just stepped out. The living room, once lively decorated, now felt melancholic with only my father-in-law's dishes laid out. As we examined the documents, we found debts listed under my father-in-law's name. This means there was no reason or need for my father-in-law to be in debt. As we finished reviewing everything, the door opened. Seeing our shoes, they hurriedly entered the room. Why are you here? Breathing heavily, Kathy confronted David. What is this, Kathy? I don't remember taking on any debt. My father-in-law calmly pulled Kathy away from David and showed her the papers, detailing debts she had incurred under his name after she could no longer borrow under her own. And this is in Mom's name. It turned out that not only Kathy but also her mother had been incurring debts. Apparently, her mother had squandered their savings meant for retirement on lavish spending with Kathy. My father-in-law, a frugal man who had saved around $600,000 for a peaceful retirement, had seen it wasted by them in just 3 years. Beyond that, they had accumulated debts totaling about $730,000 through repeated borrowing. We can't help it. The stress of having to pay child support was too much. That's right. If anything, it's that man we divorced who is to blame. Don't shift the blame. The responsibility lies with you too for not controlling your desires. The argument continued with Kathy and her mother making unsightly excuses, blaming the ex-husband, the daughters, my father-in-law, where such ideas of shifting blame onto others came from was beyond understanding. My father-in-law, armed with reason, finally silenced them and presented a divorce document. Being married to you was a lifelong shame for me. Kathy is no longer my daughter. Faced with the completed divorce form, my mother-in-law started to apologize profusely, even prostrating with tears. Yet Kathy merely looked on, refusing to apologize. Even as her mother urged her to apologize, they ended up arguing. With nothing left to say, my father-in-law walked out. What are you waiting for? Go bring Dad back. After my father-in-law left, Kathy began to panic, realizing that mere words wouldn't suffice after all the damage she'd done. Trying to win us over now, after everything? Don't involve us anymore. Leaving the in-laws' house was the best decision for us. That night, as we relaxed in our living room, the doorbell rang. Unreasonably late at around 10 p.m. It was Kathy on the monitor. David decided to handle it while I watched from inside. "What do you want at this hour? You think you can treat me like this, you sterile brother? Let me in." Apparently, after we left, Kathy and her mother had a significant fallout. And Kathy was kicked out. She tried going to her ex-husband's house but was, of course, turned away. Reluctant to pay for a hotel, she aimed to stay with us instead. That's absurd. If you don't leave now, I'm calling the police. We're family. Just let me in. Ignoring David's advice, she continued to cause a disturbance. Eventually, we had to follow through with our threat and call the police to remove her. Why do you two get to be happy? I won't forgive this. As she was taken away by the police, she spat those final words. David and I, as well as her ex-husband, had tried to reach out to Kathy initially. But it was she who destroyed every attempt at reconciliation. Over 50, Kathy likely found it impossible to change her ways. Losing money and family, she couldn't accept the irreversible consequences of her actions. Later, my father-in-law thanked us and reported that both Kathy and her mother had ended up blaming each other, leading to mutual estrangement. Burdened by their respective debts, both were now living in poverty. My mother-in-law paid the compensation quickly, probably through new debts, since it was unlikely she had the means for such immediate payment. Fortunately, the debts incurred under my father-in-law's name could be covered by the compensation. He has since rented a new home and is working as a taxi driver to rebuild his retirement funds. Kathy's children continue to maintain a relationship with their grandfather, grateful for the bond despite past events. And so, another Christmas arrived. At my father-in-law's new home, Mia and the others exchanged gifts in a cheerful atmosphere. There were no brand items, but the gifts, chosen by each child, brought genuine smiles. It's clear that extravagant brands and wealth can so drastically alter a person's character. This experience made me rethink the role of money in our lives. Mia continues to enjoy a good relationship with Kathy's children. And I watch over them, hoping they do not follow in their mother's footsteps.